Elena Vasquez sat at her usual table in the corner of the cafeteria, picking at her dinner while reading reports on her tablet. The mining station, Kepler 442b, was quiet during second shift. Most workers were either sleeping or on duty. She liked this peaceful time when she could study the alien artifact they had found last month. Dr. Vasquez was 34 years old and worked as a xenoarchaeologist. She studied old alien buildings and objects. The other workers on the station saw her as just another scientist. Not important, not dangerous. Elena was small, wore thick glasses, and spent most of her time buried in ancient books and data files. Security barely noticed her. The aluminum lunch tray in front of her held the remains of synthetic beef and vegetables. She pushed the food around with her fork, thinking about the strange symbols on the progenitor artifact. The ancient alien race had disappeared millions of years ago, but their technology still worked. Elena was close to understanding what the artifact did. A loud crash echoed through the cafeteria. Elena looked up from her tablet. The main entrance door had exploded inward. Smoke poured through the opening. Red emergency lights began flashing. The station's alarm system started wailing. "This is not a drill. All personnel report to emergency stations immediately," announced the computer voice. Elena stood up, her heart racing. She had never experienced a real emergency before. Through the smoke, she saw shapes moving. They were not human shapes. The Kethraki entered the cafeteria like death itself. They stood 7 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. Each alien carried a plasma rifle that glowed with deadly energy. Their leader was bigger than the others. With scars covering his face and arms, Elena recognized them from security briefings. The Kethraki Plasma Squad was the most feared mercenary group in this part of the galaxy. "Where is the artifact?" demanded their leader in broken English. His voice sounded like grinding metal. "Tell us now and die quickly." The few other people in the cafeteria screamed and ran for the emergency exits. Elena wanted to run too, but her legs would not move. Fear had frozen her in place. She watched as 3 security guards rushed through the side entrance, their weapons drawn. "Drop your weapons," shouted Sergeant Davis, the head of station security. The Kethraki leader, Commander Zexthan, turned toward the guards. He did not speak. His plasma rifle charged with a high whining sound. The energy blast hit Sergeant Davis in the chest. The man simply vanished, leaving only a scorch mark on the wall behind him. The other guards opened fire with their bullet weapons. The projectiles bounced off the alien's armor like raindrops. 2 more plasma blasts ended the fight. The guards were gone. Elena pressed herself against the wall, hoping the aliens would not notice her. But Commander Zexthan was already looking in her direction. His red eyes seemed to glow in the emergency lighting. "Little human," he said, walking slowly toward her table. "You work in the archaeology department." "Yes, I have seen your files." Elena's mouth was too dry to speak. She nodded. "Good. You will take us to the progenitor artifact. Then you will show us how to remove it safely. Do this, and your death will be quick." The other squad members spread out through the cafeteria, checking for hidden exits and survivors. They moved with military precision. Elena had read about these aliens. They were professional killers who had never failed a mission. Their plasma weapons could cut through starship armor. Their training was perfect. They were everything humans were not. I don't know how to remove it," Elena whispered. "We haven't figured out how it works yet." Commander Zexthan's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Then you will learn quickly. Or you will learn how hot plasma feels against skin." Elena looked around desperately. The emergency exits were blocked by alien soldiers. The main entrance was destroyed. She was trapped with the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, and they wanted her to help them steal humanity's greatest discovery. That was when she noticed wounded Security Officer Martinez crawling behind an overturned table. He was trying to reach his dropped weapon. His leg was badly burned from a plasma blast, but he was still alive, still fighting. Commander Zexthan saw him too. Humans never learn when to stay down. the alien said. He raised his plasma rifle and aimed at the wounded officer. Something inside Elena snapped. Maybe it was watching 3 good people die. Maybe it was the casual cruelty in the alien's voice. Maybe it was millions of years of human evolution suddenly waking up and refusing to roll over and die. Her hand grabbed the lunch tray from her table without thinking. As Commander Zex then pulled the trigger, Elena dove forward and angled the polished aluminum surface between the plasma bolt and Officer Martinez. The energy beam hit the tray and bounced. The reflected plasma blast struck Commander Zex then in his left shoulder, spinning him around and dropping him to one knee. The smell of burned alien flesh filled the air. For a moment, nobody moved. The other squad members stared in shock. Commander Zex then looked at his wounded shoulder, then at Elena, then at the simple lunch tray in her hands. His red eyes went wide with disbelief. "Impossible," he growled. "No species has ever reflected plasma energy. The technology does not exist." Elena stared at the tray in her hands. She had studied energy patterns in ancient ruins. She knew about angles and reflection, but she had never thought about using that knowledge as a weapon. The polished aluminum had worked like a mirror, sending the plasma bolt right back where it came from. "Human," Commander Zexton said, struggling to stand. Green blood dripped from his wound. "You have made a very big mistake." Elena helped Officer Martinez to his feet. The man was hurt but alive. She had saved him with a lunch tray and basic physics, something that should have been impossible. "Maybe," Elena said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "But I think you made a bigger one." She backed toward the kitchen area, still holding the tray like a shield. Commander Zex then roared orders in his own language. The hunt had begun. Elena had no combat training. She was not a soldier or a hero. She was just a scientist with a lunch tray, facing the deadliest aliens in known space. But she had something they did not understand. She had human stubbornness, and she was not going down without a fight. Elena crawled through the ventilation shaft above the cafeteria kitchen. Her knees hurt from the metal grating, but she forced herself to keep moving. Behind her, she could hear the Kethraki tearing the kitchen apart looking for her. "Find the human," Commander Zaxton's voice echoed through the walls. "She cannot have gone far." Elena had helped design these maintenance tunnels 3 years ago when the station was expanded. She knew every pipe, every air vent, every service corridor. The aliens did not. That was her only advantage against creatures that could kill her with a thought. She reached a junction where 3 ventilation shafts met. Here, she could access the station's environmental controls. Elena had never used them for anything more dangerous than adjusting the temperature in her laboratory. Now she was planning to turn the entire station into a weapon. Her tablet still worked, thank goodness. Elena connected to the maintenance system and began studying the station's layout. If she could reach the central control room, she might be able to send a distress signal. But first, she had to survive long enough to get there. A plasma blast melted through the wall 2 feet from her head. Elena smelled burning metal in her own singed hair. The aliens had found her hiding spot. "Come out, little human," called one of the squad members. "We promise to make it quick." Elena crawled deeper into the shaft system. Her archaeological training had taught her patience and careful observation. She had spent years studying how ancient aliens built their cities and defense systems. Now she applied those lessons to her own survival. The ventilation system connected to the station's heating network. Elena found a control panel and began redirecting hot steam through different pipes. If she calculated correctly, the temperature change would affect the aliens' thermal vision. Their equipment would see heat signatures everywhere, making it harder to track her. She also triggered the emergency lighting protocol in random sections of the station. The flashing red lights would be confusing to creatures who relied on steady illumination for their advanced optics. Elena made her way to a larger service tunnel that ran behind the main corridor. Through a maintenance grate, she could see Commander Zexthen limping past. His shoulder wound was worse than she had thought. Green blood stained his armor, and he moved more slowly than before. That gave her an idea. Elena had studied alien physiology as part of her archaeological work. The Kethraki were proud warriors who valued honor in combat. They expected enemies to face them directly. with proper weapons and tactics. What they did not expect was human creativity and spite. She opened her toolkit and pulled out a small welding torch used for delicate artifact repairs. It was not much of a weapon, but Elena was not planning to fight. She was planning to annoy them to death. Moving carefully through the service tunnels, Elena began leaving gifts for the Kethraki. She used the welding torch to burn human curse words into the metal walls where they would find them. She arranged pieces of lunch trays in patterns that spelled out rude messages in Galactic Standard script. Most importantly, she started using the station's own systems against them. Elena accessed the artificial gravity controls from a maintenance panel. She could not turn gravity off completely without authorization codes she did not have, but she could create small fluctuations. Nothing dangerous to humans who were used to working in space, but enough to throw off aliens who expected stable footing. In Section C, she reduced gravity by 10%, just as two squad members were chasing a false heat signature she had created. They stumbled and crashed into each other, their perfect military formation ruined by simple physics. In Section F, she increased gravity by 15%, right before another alien rounded a corner. The sudden weight change sent him face first into the floor. His plasma rifle discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. Elena watched through security cameras as the aliens became increasingly frustrated. They were elite soldiers, trained for direct combat. This game of hide-and-seek with an invisible enemy was driving them crazy. She made her way toward the communication array, staying in the maintenance areas. If she could send a distress signal to the Colonial Defense Force, help might arrive in time. But the communication room was guarded by one of the aliens. Through a ventilation grate, Elena studied her target. The alien soldier stood 8 feet tall and carried enough firepower to level a city block. His thermal sensors swept the area constantly. His reflexes were faster than any human could match, but he was looking for threats, not lunch trays. Elena had kept her original tray throughout her escape. The polished aluminum surface had saved her life once. Maybe it could do so again. She positioned herself above the alien guard and waited. Patience was something humans did well, even if they were not the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy. Elena had spent months studying single artifacts, waiting for them to reveal their secrets. She could wait for the right moment to strike. When the alien turned away to investigate a noise she had created with a falling tool, Elena dropped silently from the ventilation shaft. Her tray reflected the overhead lights directly into the alien's thermal sensors, temporarily blinding his advanced equipment. The creature spun around, raising his plasma rifle. But Elena was already moving. She had studied his reaction patterns through the security cameras. She knew exactly where he would turn and how fast he could aim. The plasma blast missed her by inches. Elena angled her tray and sent the energy bolt ricocheting off the metal walls. It bounced twice before hitting the alien in his weapon hand. He dropped his rifle with a howl of pain and rage. Elena was already running toward the communication room. Behind her, the alien reached for a backup weapon, but she slammed the blast door shut before he could follow. The communication array was more complex than she had hoped. Elena was a scientist, not a military communications expert. But she understood basic physics and signal transmission. She began broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, sending out a simple message over and over again. Mining Station Kepler 442b under attack. Kethraki Plasma Squad on station. Attempting to steal progenitor artifact. Require immediate assistance. Active view. She also embedded the message in routine maintenance logs that would automatically transmit to company headquarters. Even if the aliens found and destroyed the main communication array, the hidden message would still get through. As she worked, Elena could hear the aliens gathering outside the door. They had found her hiding place. Soon, they would break through and end her desperate fight. But she had accomplished something important. Help was coming, and more than that, she had proven something to herself and to the galaxy. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest species, but they were the most stubborn. They found ways to fight back even when victory seemed impossible. Elena picked up her lunch tray and prepared for the next round. Elena escaped through an emergency hatch just seconds before the Kethraki blasted through the communication room door. She could hear Commander Zexthan screaming orders in his own language. The alien words sounded angry and frustrated. Good. Angry enemies made mistakes. She had been fighting for 2 hours now. Her grandfather's stories were helping her more than any combat training ever could. He had told her about fighting in Earth's old wars, where small groups of humans used tricks and traps to defeat larger armies. Guerrilla warfare, he called it. Make the enemy afraid of shadows. Make them jump at every sound. Elena was learning to be a shadow. She moved through the station's lower levels, areas most people never visited. Down here were the recycling plants, the water purification systems, and the backup power generators. The Kethraki did not know these places existed. They were hunting for her in the main corridors and living areas, but Elena was done running. It was time to hunt them. She found what she was looking for in Storage Bay 7. Emergency supplies included portable heat lamps used for outdoor work on the planet's cold surface. Elena carefully arranged 6 lamps throughout the bay, then connected them to motion sensors. When activated, they would create multiple heat signatures that would confuse the aliens' thermal vision. Next, she visited the machine shop. Here, she found polished metal sheets used for equipment repairs. Elena cut them into different sizes and shapes. Each piece could reflect plasma bolts. Just like her lunch tray, she hid these makeshift mirrors throughout the station, creating a network of reflecting surfaces. The aliens were hunting in pairs now. Elena watched them through security cameras as they moved carefully through each section. They had learned to respect their human prey, but they still did not understand what they were fighting. Elena's first target was the pair searching Engineering Section B. She had studied their movement patterns and knew they would investigate the heat signatures in Storage Bay 7. She positioned herself in the maintenance area above the bay and waited. When the aliens entered, the motion sensors triggered all 6 heat lamps at once. The sudden burst of thermal energy overwhelmed their sensors. They fired blindly at the false targets while Elena reflected their own shots back at them using mirrors she had positioned throughout the room. The plasma bolts bounced around the storage bay like deadly light. One alien was hit in the leg. The other took a reflected shot in the chest that punched through his armor. They retreated, wounded, and confused. Elite soldiers brought low by heat lamps and mirrors, but Elena was just getting started. She began leaving presents for the remaining aliens. In the corridor where they had killed Sergeant Davis, she arranged lunch trays in the shape of a human middle finger. The message was clear and insulting. In the Galactic Standard language, the gesture meant the same thing it did to humans. In another section, she used her welding torch to burn words into the metal walls. Not just curse words now, but psychological warfare. Messages like, "You missed," and "Is that your best shot?" and "My grandmother fights better than you." Elena knew the Kethraki took great pride in their military reputation. Being mocked by a single human with kitchen equipment was destroying their confidence. She watched through cameras as Commander Zex then discovered her messages. The alien leader's scarred face twisted with rage. He began shooting at the walls, wasting ammunition on meaningless targets. His perfect military discipline was cracking. The psychological pressure was working, but Elena needed to eliminate more of them. 3 aliens were still hunting for her, plus their wounded leader. Her distress signal would bring help eventually, but she might not live long enough to see it. Time for a bigger trap. Elena made her way to the station's centrifuge chamber. This massive room created artificial gravity for the entire station by spinning continuously. She had helped calibrate the system during construction. She knew its weaknesses. She accessed the control systems and began making adjustments. Not enough to damage the station, but enough to create chaos. She set the system to randomly change speed and direction every 30 seconds. The gravity would shift and spin, creating a disorienting environment that would favor someone who understood what was happening. Then she triggered another heat signature in the chamber and waited. 2 aliens responded to the false alarm. They entered the centrifuge room just as Elena activated her trap. The floor began tilting and spinning. Gravity shifted from normal to nearly 0 to twice normal in random patterns. The Kethraki were strong and agile, but they were not prepared for combat in a constantly changing environment. They stumbled and crashed into walls as the room spun around them. Their plasma weapons fired wildly as they tried to maintain their balance. Elena moved through the chaos like a dancer. She had spent years working in zero gravity while excavating ancient ruins. The changing gravity was uncomfortable but manageable. She used maintenance handholds that humans had installed throughout the chamber, moving from surface to surface as gravity shifted. Her lunch tray became part of her body, an extension of her will. She reflected plasma shots with impossible precision, sending them bouncing through the spinning chamber. The aliens could not predict where their own shots would go after she redirected them. One alien tried to grab a handhold and missed, as gravity suddenly shifted. He spun helplessly through the air, firing his weapon in panic. Elena angled her tray and sent his plasma bolt back at him. The energy beam hit him center mass. He stopped firing. The second alien managed to brace himself against a wall, but Elena was already moving. She reflected his shot off her tray, then off a polished metal panel, then off another mirror she had hidden earlier. The plasma bolt hit him from behind, from a direction he never could have expected. 2 more aliens down. 2 more professional killers defeated by human ingenuity and a piece of cafeteria equipment. Elena shut down the centrifuge and restored normal gravity. She was breathing hard, and her hands were shaking. But she was alive. More importantly, she was winning. Through the security system, she could see Commander Zex then and his last remaining soldier searching frantically for her. The alien leader was wounded, angry, and desperate. His perfect military operation was falling apart because of one small human with a lunch tray. But Elena was not done with them yet. She had one more lesson to teach the galaxy about underestimating humanity, and she knew exactly where to make her final stand. The archaeology lab contained the progenitor artifact they had come to steal. Elena had studied it for weeks without understanding its true purpose, but she was beginning to suspect that the ancient device had been waiting for exactly this moment. Time to find out what humanity was really capable of. Elena entered her archaeology lab for what might be the last time. The progenitor artifact sat in the center of the room, surrounded by scanning equipment and research notes. It looked like a simple black pyramid, about the size of her fist, but Elena knew it contained technology beyond human understanding. She had spent weeks trying to activate the device. Nothing had worked. Electromagnetic fields, sound waves, heat, cold, electrical current. The artifact ignored everything. But now, with her heart pounding from combat and her mind sharp with survival instinct, Elena felt something different. The artifact was humming. It was not making any sound she could hear. But something deep in her brain sensed the vibration. Like a tuning fork matching her frequency, Elena approached it slowly, her lunch tray still gripped in her free hand. Commander Zexthan's voice echoed through the station's communication system. He had found the central control room. "Little human," he announced. "I know where you are hiding. You have cost me 4 of my best soldiers. But this game ends now. Come to the main corridor and face me with honor, or I will destroy every section of this station until I find you." Elena ignored him. She was focused on the artifact. As she came closer, the humming grew stronger. The black surface began to show faint lines of silver light. Symbols appeared and disappeared like writing on water. She reached out and touched it. The world exploded into understanding. Information flooded Elena's mind. Not words or pictures, but pure knowledge downloaded directly into her consciousness. She saw the progenitor civilization at its height millions of years ago, a race of beings who had explored every corner of the galaxy, always searching for something they never found. They had been looking for successors. The progenitor race was ancient beyond measure, but they were also dying. Their technology was perfect, their cities were beautiful, and their knowledge was vast. But they lacked something essential. They had no creativity, no ability to adapt, no spark of random inspiration that could solve impossible problems. They were missing what humans called imagination. So they had created tests. Artifacts scattered across the galaxy, waiting for a species that could think in ways the progenitors never could. A race that would take their knowledge and use it to create something new and wonderful. The test was not about technology or strength. It was about stubborn refusal to give up when any reasonable person would surrender. It was about using lunch trays as weapons when plasma rifles were not available. It was about being human. Elena felt the artifact's power flowing into her mind and body. Her reflexes became faster. Her vision showed her the paths that plasma bolts would take before they were fired. Her understanding of angles and reflection became perfect and automatic. She was still human. But now she was a human with progenitor enhancements. The lab door exploded inward. Commander Zexthan and his last soldier entered with weapons raised. The alien leader looked terrible. His shoulder wound had gotten worse. Green blood stained his armor, and his red eyes burned with hatred and pain. "So you finally show yourself," he snarled. "Do you think hiding in your little laboratory will save you?" Elena stood up slowly. The artifact had gone dark again, but she could feel its power running through her nervous system. Everything was crystal clear. She could see exactly where each alien would move, where their weapons would point, how their plasma bolts would travel. "I was not hiding," Elena said calmly. "I was learning." Commander Zex then raised his plasma rifle. "Learn this, human. The Kethraki Plasma Squad has never failed a mission. You may have killed my soldiers through tricks and luck, but now you face me directly. I will take that artifact, and then I will take your life." "Actually," Elena said, raising her lunch tray, "I think you have already lost." The first plasma blast came from Zexthan's rifle, aimed directly at Elena's chest. She angled her tray and reflected the bolt off a computer screen, then off a metal filing cabinet, then off a mirror she had placed on the wall earlier. The energy beam struck the second alien soldier from behind, dropping him instantly. Zexthan fired again, and again Elena redirected his shot. This time the plasma bolt bounced off her tray, hit a polished metal lamp, ricocheted off the artifact's scanning equipment, and burned through the alien leader's left leg. He stumbled but kept firing. "Impossible!" he roared. "No one can predict plasma reflection patterns. It cannot be done." Elena moved between the lab tables like water flowing around stones. The enhanced reflexes from the progenitor artifact let her see the future paths of every energy beam. Her lunch tray moved with perfect precision, turning each attack against her enemies. She did not just defend. She went on the offense. Elena grabbed polished metal specimens from her research collection. She threw them into the air and used her tray to bounce plasma bolts off them, creating a deadly light show that filled the laboratory. Energy beams crossed and recrossed, reflecting off a dozen surfaces before striking their targets. Commander Zex then tried to take cover behind a heavy desk, but Elena's enhanced understanding of physics let her calculate impossible angles. She sent a plasma bolt around 3 corners to burn through his cover. Another shot reflected off the ceiling to singe his remaining good arm. "What are you?" he screamed. "What have you become?" Elena stepped into clear view, her lunch tray gleaming under the laboratory lights. Around her, the walls were scored with plasma burns in perfect geometric patterns. The air smelled like ozone and burned metal. "I am human," she said simply. "And I am exactly what your people never learned to fear." Zexthan's final attack was desperate and powerful. He fired every remaining charge in his weapon, filling the laboratory with deadly energy. But Elena was ready. She moved her tray in a complex pattern, reflecting each bolt with mathematical precision. The plasma beams bounced around the room like light in a house of mirrors. They struck Commander Zexthan from 7 different directions at once, each hit perfectly calculated to avoid damaging the valuable research equipment. The alien leader fell to his knees, his weapon empty and his armor smoking. He looked up at Elena with something that might have been respect. "I understand now," he wheezed. "You were never running from us. You were leading us to your territory, to your strength." Elena lowered her tray. "Your mistake was thinking humans are weak because we use simple tools. But simple tools in the right hands can move worlds." Commander Zex then collapsed. The most feared mercenary squad in the galaxy had been defeated by a single human with a lunch tray and the ancient wisdom of a dead civilization. But Elena knew this was not over. Word would spread through the galaxy about what had happened here. Other aliens would learn that humans were more dangerous than anyone had imagined, and somewhere in space, help was finally arriving. 3 days later, Elena sat in the same corner of the cafeteria where everything had started. The emergency repairs were nearly finished. New tables had replaced the ones destroyed by plasma fire. Fresh paint covered the scorch marks on the walls, but the aluminum lunch tray in front of her bore new dents and scratches that told a different story. The Colonial Defense Force had arrived 6 hours after her final battle with Commander Zex Than. Admiral Torres himself had led the rescue mission, expecting to find either dead humans or stolen artifacts. Instead, he found Elena calmly organizing her research notes, while 5 of the galaxy's most dangerous aliens lay unconscious around her laboratory. Dr. Vasquez, the Admiral had said, staring at the scene in amazement. What exactly happened here? Elena had held up her lunch tray. I had lunch, they interrupted. Now, 3 days later, the interviews were finally over. Military intelligence, corporate security, xenopsychology experts, and combat analysts had all wanted to know how a single human scientist had defeated the Kethraki plasma squad. Elena told them the truth. She had used basic physics, environmental knowledge, and stubborn human refusal to give up. They did not quite believe her. The surviving Kethraki had been taken into custody, but not before word of their defeat had spread through the galactic criminal networks. According to intelligence reports, 3 other mercenary groups had cancelled planned raids on human installations. The psychological impact was enormous. Elena's tablet chimed with another message. Job offers had been flooding in from across human space. Military intelligence wanted her to train special forces. Corporate security offered huge salaries for her consulting services. The University of New Cambridge wanted her to head their new Department of Applied Xenoarchaeology. She deleted them all, just like she had deleted the hundreds of messages before. Elena was not interested in becoming a professional warrior or a celebrity scientist. She had work to finish. The progenitor artifact had revealed its secrets to her, but those secrets raised new questions that would take years to answer properly. Dr. Vasquez? A young voice interrupted her thoughts. Elena looked up to see Ensign Martinez, the son of the security officer she had saved during the first attack. The young man's father was still recovering in the medical bay, but he would live. His son had requested assignment to the station's new enhanced security detail. Yes, Ensign. My father wanted me to give you this. He handed her a small wrapped package. He said you would understand. Elena opened the package carefully. Inside was a new lunch tray. This one made of polished titanium instead of aluminum. Engraved on the back were the words, "To the woman who proved that the right tool in the right hands can save the world." She smiled and set the new tray beside her old one. Both would have their place in her laboratory. Tell your father thank you, she said. And tell him that humans protect each other. It is what we do. The young ensign nodded and left. Elena returned to her reading, but her peace was interrupted again by the arrival of Admiral Torres. The military man sat down across from her without invitation. Doctor, I need to ask you something important, he said. The progenitor artifact. What did it really do to you? Elena had been expecting this question. During her debriefing, she had mentioned enhanced reflexes and improved spatial awareness. She had not mentioned the flood of ancient knowledge, or the feeling that she now understood humanity's role in the galaxy's future. It showed me that we passed the test, she said simply. What test? Elena gestured at her lunch tray, then at the repaired cafeteria around them. The test of whether we deserve to inherit what came before us. Whether we can take someone else's tools and make them into something new and better. Admiral Torres frowned. I do not understand. The progenitors were an advanced race, but they were also limited. They could build perfect technology, but they could not imagine new ways to use it. They were looking for a species that could take their knowledge and create something they never thought of. Elena picked up her old lunch tray and turned it in the light. The scratched and dented aluminum caught reflections from around the cafeteria. They left us tests. Not tests of strength or intelligence, but tests of creativity and stubborn determination. Tests of our ability to look at simple tools and see weapons. To turn household objects into instruments of victory. And we passed? Elena nodded. Humans have been passing that test for thousands of years. Every time we turned sticks into spears, rocks into tools, fire into engines, every time we refused to accept that something was impossible just because no one had done it before. Admiral Torres was quiet for a long moment. So what happens now? Now we keep being human. We keep asking questions, making tools, and refusing to give up when reasonable people would surrender. The galaxy is going to learn that humans are not just another species. We are the inheritors of something much older and more important. The Admiral stood to leave, then paused. One more question, Doctor. Would you do it again? Elena looked around the cafeteria. In her mind, she could still see Security Officer Martinez crawling across the floor, trying to reach his weapon despite terrible wounds. She could hear Commander Zexthan's casual cruelty as he prepared to execute a wounded man. She could feel the moment when something ancient and fierce had awakened in her human heart. Every time, she said. Every single time. After the Admiral left, Elena finished her meal in peaceful silence. Around her, the station returned to its normal routine. Miners prepared for their shifts. Scientists reviewed their research. Engineers maintained the systems that kept them all alive in the cold vacuum of space. None of them knew they were eating lunch with the woman who had redefined humanity's place in the galaxy. The woman who had proven that humans were dangerous not because of their technology or their armies, but because of their imagination and their absolute refusal to accept defeat. Elena's tablet chimed with another message. This one was different. A report from Deep Space Exploration had found another progenitor site. The artifacts there were larger and more complex than anything discovered before. She smiled and began planning her next research expedition. The galaxy was full of ancient secrets waiting for human curiosity to unlock them. And Elena Vasquez, armed with her scientific training and her battle-tested lunch tray, was ready to find them all. Humanity had passed its first test. But Elena suspected there would be many more challenges ahead. Good thing humans were excellent at improvising.